Here on air, I have today with me Johan Tiridus Sjunnesson. Hi Tiridus, how are you doing?
Hello Annika, I'm doing just fine.
Thank you for coming to the show. I hope that your old fans can enjoy this interview, and perhaps by sharing your experiences, you can shed light on the path of new players who are thinking of esports as a possible career.
It will be my pleasure.
So, the first thing that a player needs to get into esports in League of Legends is usually the team. How did you, back in Season 1, form your first team?
We started out slow in Season 1. I started playing with my brother and a friend from my town, or two friends from my town actually, and we started playing normal games and just having fun. We played like a team, but not in any version of competitive way.
As I recall, back then there was no real competitive scene for League of Legends, was there?
Well, there was the World Championship. It was actually started all in Season 1. There was no big amateur scene though. There was like a couple of big tournaments, and how these tournaments were brought up in the first place, I don't really recall, but there was a couple of big tournaments and there was no league or anything like that. It was basically top of the ladder that created teams.
So you were really lucky to find a team that easily.
Yeah, that's right.
What about the competitive play? When did you guys start to consider a more serious approach towards League of Legends?
Well, we started playing out games in small-time tournaments, such as Go for LOL, and we started playing them for fun, and we saw that you could earn money from it, and that was basically what we had in mind for a goal, but all in all, it was mostly for fun.
This was about 6 years ago, all the way back in Season 1. Do you still happen to remember what lineup you had back then? Who was in the team?
If I recall correctly, we had me, my brother, North, Reser, which is a guy from our hometown. We had Lyckas, which is also a guy from our town. And then we had Attis, a Swedish guy we found over the web.
So it was a full Swedish team then?
It was a full Swedish team, yes.
In Season 2, despite of going pro not originally having been the idea, your team actually started to really take off. What brought about this change?
In Season 2, we had realized that me and my brother had a fairly high skill level, that we could probably do something bigger than just having fun playing tournaments, small-time tournaments. And then we started searching new members after the first ones left. And the results from this is that we picked up Strategas, a Lithuanian AD carry, and Nico, a Danish support. And for young opposition, we had a guy called Snubbet, which is a Swede, that helped us out. And after that, we started placing higher in tournaments or performed better. And that kind of ignited a competitive spirit in us.
You mentioned earlier these tournaments, Go for LOL, and I know that they played a big part in your career as well. I'm sure that most of the listeners do know what Go for LOL is, but for the sake of those who might not, would you describe Go for LOL a little bit more in depth?
It's a weekly tournament, and pretty much the whole amateur scene in the Europe servers. It was a really good way to at least make some kind of money. First place prize for Go for LOL each tournament started out as 300 euros, so it was 60 euro per person. And a tournament took from usually around 15 o'clock to 10 o'clock on the evening. So it was 7 hours in total, or so. Although most of the time was waiting, because you had to wait until the next opponents had appeared. Later, after the prize pool rose to 400 euros per week. And then we had the top 8 teams for that month play in the monthly finals, which the first prize was 500 euros.
That sounds almost like having a job in the side of studies once a week.
Well, yeah, basically.
We had, you and I, a small discussion about your tournament success before the interview, and you mentioned that you have approximately 25 Go for LOL first place victories under your belt. That's pretty impressive.
We had around 25 wins, as I recall, although we weren't ruling champions, you couldn't say, because that was Meteor Makers that had well over 30 wins.
Yes, I remember. Meteor Makers used to be quite feared opponent on Go for LOL tournaments. So that was season 2 for your team. And in season 3, as I've understood, different esports organizations started to approach your team.
Yeah, at some point, organizations started becoming bigger in League of Legends, and even smaller time teams had some light cast upon them.
What is it that an esports organization actually does for a team that it picks up?
Well, it kind of depends. You have a contract, or in most cases, you have a contract. And it states the organization's rights to the player and what they should do for you and the player's obligations.
What kinds of obligations does a player have towards the organization that he has a contract with?
That shifts from organization to organization. But for us, it was not much more than like practicing, not slandering the organization. Public media was a big thing as well for some organizations.
So in a nutshell, thou shall practice appropriately, thou shall not speak bad of your boss, and thou shall advertise the organization whose colors you're wearing, so to speak, in the social media. Is that it?
Well, not like actively advertise, it's just like having the brand up. You had to change your name in game to have like FX Tiridus, for example.
You and your team have had quite the colorful past, actually, when it comes to organizations. I remember there's been Team Ethics, and Roughnecks, and Tricked. What all organizations have you had a contract with?
I've had contracts for Team Ethics, Revolt Gentlemen Esports Club, EUNE, although that was just a trust-based contract, there was nothing signed. And you can already tell that's pretty fishy. Then we had Roughnecks, and then we went over to Eternity Gaming, and lastly we had Tricked Esports. And in between these organizations, we had a couple of periods that we were teamless, or organizationless, rather.
So, what did these organizations exactly provide you with?
Well, here's where things start to mess up, because when you're a smaller team working for a smaller organization, you're not getting much, or you're not entering big tournaments, and there's a lot of fishy things going on in the scene. Teams haven't been paid, etc. But we didn't have a salary. For some organizations, which were among the best we had paid trip to a LAN, for example. That was like the biggest thing for me. And we had team shirts for Roughnecks, and we had team shirts for Tricked Esports.
So, you spoke about this fishy business earlier that can be going on with some of the esports organizations. From your experience, what kinds of things should a new player signing a contract with an organization look out for and avoid?
What you have to look out is you have to read the contract thoroughly, and it should have some safety nets, like if the organization doesn't fulfill the obligations that they have to the player, then you as a player can just leave the organization right away. That was in some of our contracts. But also like sketchy vocal promises we had with one organization that is called Revolt Gentlemen Esports Club. It was a Turkish organization. I'm not having any bad feelings with them, actually. But we heard a lot of good stuff and a lot of good promises, and we accepted pretty much right away. And we bore their name for a couple of months, and we got nothing from it.
So, after this vocal contract fell through and turned out to be nothing but a bunch of empty promises, you got picked up by Roughnecks.
Yeah, that's right. After being organizationless for several months, we were picked up by Roughnecks, and I think Roughnecks was a nice organization.
Even so, you guys did not stay with Roughnecks for a very long time. However, the next big step in your career was about to take place, and it did, exactly around the time when you swapped organizations again. Would you tell us about those events?
We were planning to attend an event in Jönköping, Sweden called DreamHack, and they held a League of Legends tournament, and the prize pool was 7,800 euros. We were planning to attend the event with our current organization, Roughnecks, that would help us with the traveling fees. And we had two from Denmark, which is Mikey R and Nico 333. And then we had me and my brother Morf from Sweden, so we had easy time to go there. The biggest money question was for our AD carry Tiridus to fly over from Lithuania to Sweden. But At the time, just a week before the tournaments, another organization, Eternity Gaming, made a pretty large offer for us, and their offers were better than Roughneck's. So in a team decision, we swapped the organization from Roughneck's to Eternity Gaming for the event.
Changing organizations so suddenly, especially before such a big event, must not have been easy for you guys.
Yeah, we basically made the finishing deals just in the same week that the tournament was held. For the tournament, we had actually prepared a boot camp. We had 2 huts. The problem was only that the internet was actually sealed, so we couldn't play League of Legends. Only me with my mobile network could I get some practice. And we couldn't get the owners of the huts to allow us to play because they didn't want to open the ports needed for League of Legends for some reason.
Oof, that's definitely not the scenario you want for your team 2 days before such a big tournament. How did you guys cope?
Well, I got some practice and we got some team bonding, which is a lot because we had played for over a year, basically with our current setup.
Yes, that was the first time you guys met face to face, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was pretty interesting actually, because playing with people online brings you to a pretty close friendship if you play every day. And then you meet offline. It's pretty awkward at first, but you quickly go into the same friendship that I had online.
So, what happened actually during DreamHack? How did you guys manage, considering you've had this rough patch where you'd changed organization and been unable to utilize your provided bootcamp due to not having internet? So how did things eventually turn out?
Well, for starters, DreamHack was set up for an online qualifier that we didn't play. But there was also an offline qualifier that we joined. We smooth sailed through the whole offline qualifier. And then we got to play on the big stage. It was quite nerve-wracking, and we lost all 3 of our games. It was a huge difference from playing on stage and playing like at home. Just the noise all around. Even though we had noise-canceling headphones, sound actually got through the microphones. That was our first time playing on a big stage. It was really, really exciting and a lot of fun. Even though we didn't place high. For just losing the group stage, we got 10,000 Swedish crowns, which is around 1,115 euros.
What about after DreamHack? Having lost 3 games on the big stage, even if you got the 1,000 euros to share between the 5 of you to cover the entrance fees and some of the traveling and living costs in Sweden, it must have been pretty devastating for you guys. How did you handle it?
Well, I think a lot of us were upset, including me, of course. Nobody likes to lose, and especially not your big first tournament offline. It definitely was not a nice feeling. At the same time, it was a very fun experience, and even though we lost all games, it was such a big difference playing on a stage in front of people and listening to when they shout your name, when you do good play or announce your name before the game. It felt really good actually, being on stage. It gave a lot, I think. It set perspective how it was to play on the big stage, and you had to get used to it if you were going to perform at all in big tournaments and make a living for it. I think it only motivated us more to try harder next time.
So you managed to make the most of this loss and, so to say, rise stronger than ever to face a new challenge.
Yeah, pretty much. After DreamHack, we kept on playing Go for LOL in smaller time tournaments. It was about this time that the qualifiers for the LCS started popping up, if my memory serves me right. And the LCS is basically the professional league for League of Legends, where you're being paid to play by the owner of League of Legends.
Which is, of course, the American company Riot Games. The way you're describing LCS, it seems like LCS can be compared to some sort of professional international football league, isn't that correct?
Exactly. It's basically a full-time job where you play each week against other people in the league and on stage in front of an audience in Germany.
Yes, and there are casters analyzing and hyping up the game, and it can be so much fun to watch. But let's get back to your story. After DreamHack, your team underwent some changes.
We did have a player change during the winter. So instead of Strategas, we got an AD carry China from Serbia. And afterwards, we started playing in online qualifiers for the LCS. And although we didn't win the qualifiers, we came fairly far in the online qualifier. But afterwards, we kept on playing online tournaments such as Go for LOL, and we jokingly named ourselves Go for LOL Money because we won so many Go for LOLs, and it became quite a lot of money that you earned from it over the weeks.
I remember that name. So at this point, we have already reached Season 4, which was year 2014, for those of you who don't keep track of the seasons. And that was quite an eventful year for you guys, wasn't it?
That's right. In early spring, we started talking with a new organization that's called Tricked Esports that we had actually played against in earlier tournaments. And we started making plans for playing on the Copenhagen Games 2014, which is also an event offline, although significantly smaller with only about 1,000 people, whereas DreamHack had over 25,000. We didn't pick up Tricked Esports for Copenhagen Games. We actually got there by our own accord. And in April that year, 2014, we got to play again on an offline event. And as I mentioned, it's a lot smaller, although the tournament was pretty much just as big. Not as much people attending, but the prize pool for the first place was around 8,000 euros. And it actually went really bad for us in the beginning. We lost our 2 first rounds. After almost being knocked out of the tournament, we actually managed to win against the third team. And then it turned out that all the teams in the group, except for one team that is, lost 2 games each and won 1. So everybody lost to each other and won to each other in a circle. So it became a 3-way tie. And we managed to come out on top of this. So we qualified for the quarterfinals. And here we managed to prevail once again, and we managed to go to the semifinals.
But unfortunately, your promising road towards the first place ended there when you were pitted against NIP, Ninjas in Pyjamas, a team that had been on the League of Legends Championship series the previous season.
Yeah, we fell short and lost 2 games. And then this tournament also had a third place match. And in the third place match, we actually won and got the third place overall. So it turned out greatly for us all, and we were all very happy with it because we did feel a bit inadequate because Ninjas in Pyjamas and Cloud9 EU were the obvious big-time guys in the amateur scene at the time, and us placing third felt really good for us. We got 2,400 euros. And that is for just a weekend of playing.
So overall, things were looking up for you guys. You had come out third in a rather major tournament, and the same month you signed a contract with Tricked. And you and your team ended up staying with Tricked for a little bit over a year, more or less all the way until the time when you guys disbanded. Can you tell us about that final year with Tricked?
Well, after placing third on Copenhagen Games, we were all in high spirits, and we did slow down with the Go for LOLs because we wanted to practice more to get obviously into bigger tournaments and play better. Much to my sadness, it was actually a team decision. I wanted to get better, of course.
So what was the exact reason why you quit playing Go for LOL with your team?
Playing Go for LOL didn't bring a lot of practice because you had to wait a lot of time for the next opponent, and was basically the semifinals and the finals when it got hard and it became worthwhile that you played. So we actually cut down on the Go for LOLs and started scrimming against other teams in the amateur scene. And scrimming is basically you set up a custom game and play against each other, and trying out the different strategies and just trying to get better in team play. And we obviously set our eyes on the LCS qualifiers, which was the big thing, as we tried to get into the pro scene.
but you guys did not end up in the LCS and slowly after that stopped reaching for that goal. How did that happen?
Well, we did lose the online qualifiers that year as well, and we did attend Gamescom the same year in August, which was really demoralizing for us and was the early starters of us splitting up, I believe now in hindsight, because we lost all of the games as well, a repeat of DreamHack 2013. We started to feel a lot less motivated playing the game. I think it was one of the bigger problems being that I didn't practice enough on my own. I've only felt like playing with the team and not improving myself. I believe that was the starting of the breaking point for us. And then the next year in March, we actually split up.
Well, like the cliché saying goes, all things must come to an end sometime. So, now that your reaching for pro scene days are over, do you still play League of Legends?
I have never stopped playing League, actually. I have played significantly less. Before you had practice every day, but now I'm currently playing in a team with friends that is called a Team Alternate Ending. And although we are not going for a professional approach, I feel it's fun to play in a somewhat serious manner, practicing together. It brings you back.
I'm glad that you have a team environment that you feel you can enjoy. So before we move on to briefly talk about the differences between seasons, I think it's very much worth it to brush upon your solo queue career, if we can call it that. You held the #1 position on EU Nordic East, one of the European servers, through seasons 1 and 2, and as I recall, a little bit of 3rd. And I find this rather exciting because my next interview is going to be with Deficio, against whom you competed over the #1 spot all the way back in season 1.
That is correct. In the beginning of the season 1, I actually did not play much ranked. It wasn't until they mentioned that they would split the Europe servers because it was too much traffic to have it on just one server that I realized that I could get somewhere. And then Deficio was one of the big guys on top above me, and when I started climbing out, I had them in sight to climb over, and I did come out on top in the end.
Eventually.
Eventually, indeed.
So, before we wrap this interview up, I would like to ask you your thoughts on season 1 to season 6. What is the biggest difference between these seasons?
The biggest difference is by far the amount of champions that you can choose between.
What is the one thing that you miss the most from season 1? Is it an item, or a champion before a rework, or a tactics, or a tactic, anything? What do you miss the most, if you miss anything?
What I miss most about season 1 is the different item builds that you could do on champions, because they had weird scalings. For example, AP Tristana, which was actually not nerfed until quite recently in season 5, I believe.
I don't remember when AP Tristana got nerfed, but I do remember things like AP Tryndamere and AP Zinzhao. There's even that very famous video by CivHD about him. So, what about items? I hear so many times when speaking about seasons 1, 2, or 3, for example, about the missing Heart of Gold or Oracle's Elixir, all these items that just got discarded. What do you miss the most in terms of items, or anything else you miss?
What I probably miss the most is Deficio Grasp, which was a completely broken item for mid-lane assassins such as me. Apart from that, I think I miss broken champions such as Twisted Fate at the current time. And the reason why it was so ridiculous was that his W could stun multiple targets around the central target. So it was an AoE stun, and his E, which was basically a teleport anywhere on the map. For example, a strategy in the past could be that you teleport in between two turrets in a lane before minions spawn and put a ward and let the whole team teleport, and then you just wait for the champions to arrive in their lane before the minions spawn and just kill them. Funny tactics such as that is what I miss. Is the part of what I miss most about League of Legends.
Well, I for one am happy that Twisted Fate got nerfed before I started to play League myself. But it is time for us to wrap things up now. Is there anything you would like to say to our listeners? Perhaps there are some of your fans listening.
I would like to thank you for the support I've gotten from my fans. And even though I might not be the best at communicating with my fans, I've appreciated all the support that you've given me. And for all listeners, thanks for sticking around through the whole interview. You can tune in next week to listen to my old rival Deficio talk about his successful League of Legends career.
Thanks once more for the interview, Tiridus.
Thanks for having me here.